My lords, the hour is late, and I found my brain somewhat pounded into stupefaction by the thoughts of the noble Lord Parkinson of Whitley Bay. I found myself even perhaps disloyally and strangely in agreement with Lord Addington's thoughts on that particular matter, the noble Lord Addington's thoughts on that matter. I'm also, in this state of stupefaction, concerned about the serried ranks of the government's benches waiting to jump on any mistake that I might make. So I hope they, or perhaps their ghosts, will forgive me for anything. And I'll try to just make three quick points, because the noble Baroness Lady Fox and the noble Lord Jackson have said it all. I could perhaps just say what they said, but I'll try to make three very quick points in view of the lateness of the hour and the evident but brave tiredness of these ranks in front of me. I'll make three quick points. First is that EDI is, believe it or not, for those who desperately believe in it and think it's tremendously important and think it's absolutely essential to put into this bill, it's a passing fad. It's a fashion. It's not even a fashion that we came up with. It's a fashion we imported from America. My wife was, for many decades, a fashion designer in New York, and she would point out to me how the colour would be decided in New York, and the next year it would be copied in London. The line, the cut, the theme of fashion would be decided in New York, and a year later decided in London. Well, so it is with all of these moral panics that for the last decade we have seen one by one arise and be taken very seriously and gradually fade away. The noble Baroness Lady Fox talked about how even now, American academia, having become obsessed with it for many years, it's now everybody getting bored with it because it actually turns out to be a bit of a disaster. So one by one, all of these moral panics will disappear away, and in coming decades people will say, why on earth did they think that way? What on earth told them? There was, as the noble Lord Jackson said, no academic evidence. The academic evidence that companies like McKinsey used to make hundreds of millions or more out of companies for selling these lines have turned out to be completely shown as disreputable by careful academic analysis. And I know I used to work for McKinsey. There were 800 people when I worked there around the world. There are now 46,000, and they grew on stuff like this without any really valid academic basis. So it's a passing fad, my lords, and I hope that we won't allow this to become implanted into football just at the time that it's beginning to fade. The second point is that it crowds out useful activity. I spent decades advising chief executives of the largest companies of the world as to what they should do. And the one thing that I and so many others like me advised them on was focus. Don't allow yourself to get distracted. But what we've heard, and noble lords who've been here during this committee will remember, I've frequently described this bill as a Christmas tree. And what we've heard is everybody trying to hang baubles onto the Christmas tree. And I am chairman of an educational think tank, and once a year, for many years, we published a list of all the things that people thought should be taught in schools. And there are about 200 new ideas every year. Oh, kids should be taught gardening, kids should be taught emotional EQ stuff, emotional intelligence. And if you try to do that, you get away from being able to teach kids to read, write, add up, and become useful citizens in the world. So with football clubs. If you put all of these things onto this bill, gambling, EDI, whatever, think about the board which doesn't have the time to focus on, have we got the right team? Are we hiring the right players? Is our coach any good? How are we doing? Are our staff happy? None of that. We're going to spend most of our time, and that is the case in many boards nowadays, talking about which of many regulators, including now this new football regulator, we are going to have to satisfy. They will lose focus. It will crowd out useful activity. And finally, my lords, it has unintended consequences. Think of an earlier moral fad, ESG. The FCA has required all companies registered on the London Stock Exchange to have an ESG plan, and the wording looks much like the wording here for EDI. Since that happened, scores of companies have left the London Stock Exchange. The London Stock Exchange is dying as we watch it. It cannot be surprising if you're a chief executive or the chairman or the major shareholder of a company who is going to list, and you're told, where are you going to list? You're asked, where are you going to list? And you say, well, which one should I? Well, if you go to London, you'll have this ESG regulation all over you, and it's going to be a huge time sink. You're going to have to hire lots of people, and you're going to have to show all sorts of compliance. Oh, fine, good. Well, I think I'll go over to NASDAQ and sign there. And so it will be if we put too many onerous requirements, such as this EDI, on football clubs. Companies or investors that think that they might invest in a British football team will say, it's not going to be worth the candle. We're not going to be able to focus on being a good football team. We're going to have to do all these things that this bill requires us to do. And we're going to have a regulator, and we already have all these shadow people, one by one being hired, one by one planning how they're going to exercise control over football clubs. We're going to have them all. I'm not going to do it. And I can predict to you that with this bill, particularly if we add all these baubles onto the Christmas tree, we are going to see the Premier League, the greatest league in the world, gradually go down the drain.